I've played enough of Splatoon 3 to give you a bit of an opinion about it now. Overall, I'm really enjoying it, though it does feel and look extremely similar to its predecessor, but unlike with Splatoon 1 and 2, the jump from 2 and 3 includes some very nice quality of life changes that I didn't expect would make such a good, or big difference rather. I also think the new features are surprisingly fun, and it also gives you finally something to spend your money on and or work towards. Just so you know, my review of this game is very much from my perspective. I haven't fondled every part of the game in great detail. I've just been playing it in basically how I wanted to play it without a review in mind. And there's also going to be a few comparisons between Splatoon 2 and 3 from my perspective. Now I'll give you a bit of a rundown on what the game is about. I think everyone already knows what the fundamental basics of Splatoon is, but if you haven't played the game or any of the games, you might not know about all of its game modes, so I'll give you a bit of a rundown. Basically, it's squid characters shooting ink with weapons. They can hide and swim in the ink too, which is a bit of a unique feature not found in other shooters. There's a couple of game modes here. Single player, which is a platforming shooter experience, which also has deeper lore than you may expect. Multiplayer mode has several 4 versus 4 competitive modes, while Salmon Run is a 4-player cooperative mode where you try and collect a quota of golden eggs while trying to survive 3 waves of enemies. Unlike most shooters, you play Splatoon from a third-person perspective. Not that that's totally unusual. What is, however, compared to other shooters, is that you control a squid who shoots ink with various weapons. There's actually several categories like, for example, normal type shooters, dualies, sloshers, which is like a buckety type thing, various charged weapons, brushes and rollers, among others. I won't name all of them, but there's a lot of diversity there, and each category has several weapons you can choose from, which is nice. Not to mention each category of weapon behaves very differently. The weapons are made from various household items, some obvious, others not so much. Occasionally they'll also reference some past Nintendo accessories like the light gun, among other things. Splatoon 3 has a couple of new weapons, as in like weapon types. There's now a bow and arrow like thing, or rather category called stringers, and they shoot 3 arrows of ink, if that makes sense. And it shoots horizontally or vertically depending if you're jumping or not. And then there's the splatanas, which are a type of slashing weapon as you might expect from the name, and both of those can be charged as well. So there's some interesting stuff going on there. Various sub-weapons exist too, like things that act like grenades to more sophisticated things that can home in on enemies or do completely different things. Specials are special attacks that you can use after inking a certain amount of ground. Again, everything from attack to support type things exist. Secondary and specials are tied to the main weapons, by the way, so you can't just select the ones you want. Killing other players is called splatting, which is a slightly unfortunate word to use in my opinion. I already mentioned that you can swim around in the ink, which also enables you to go up walls, but using weapon uses up ink, which I think is an important thing to note. So you do have to hide in the ink to replenish your ink. With secondary weapons, you'll actually see how much ink you need before being able to use it. There's a little line there. And depending on which secondary weapon it is, the line is at a different place. It also makes a little noise once you reach that threshold, so you don't always have to look at it. I really like how Splatoon handles equipment, as in like that they look like clothes, like shoes and hats and etc. They have primary abilities, and you can have up to 3 ability slots per item also. As you level up, so does your gear, and then you unlock more ability slots, if they're there. There's also mechanics in place that allow you to add ability slots and then also re-roll them if it's not exactly what you want. Before getting to multiplayer, let's talk about single player first. I'm not going to spoil the story, but I will say that I do like how the game's post-apocalyptic lore, which at this point isn't a secret, is brought up to the forefront more and more. As you go through the stages, more lore gets unlocked, which you can read up on. I also like how the game first tricks you into thinking that it'll be similar to the single-player mode of the first and second game, but it's soon revealed that a lot from Octo Expansion has made its way into the third game in terms of how gameplay is done. For example, like how all the stages are specific challenges and you start in the same sort of room with a choice of weapons. Plus, if you fail, you basically get assassinated. There's multiple islands, and each island you can do the levels on in any order. There's this furry and blobby looking mess that doesn't allow you to roam freely, but that's where your new sidekick, Small Fry, comes in handy. A combination of points and his ability to eat this stuff allows you to go further. He's also useful in levels because he can distract enemies and also manipulate things that you can't reach. The levels are varied, so that keeps things quite fun, and you can also upgrade various stats on your character. Let's talk multiplayer, probably the most played game mode in Splatoon 3, I think. In the lobby, you'll find Turf War and 2 ranked modes, which for this game is renamed to Anarchy Battles. Turf War is the regular multiplayer mode. The aim is to cover as much of the ground with ink as possible, with the winning team being the one that inked the most. You get experience, which goes towards your overall level. You also get money, and your catalog level can go up. Each time you up your catalog level, you get rewards like emotes, stuff to decorate your locker with, and other customizable items, which we'll get into later in the video. Something that's new is that you get medals if you did something special, like for example if you were the #1 base inker or splatter or whatever it may be. They don't count or, give you extra points or anything, unless you're talking about Anarchy Battle series, where they contribute to the total points you collect. One of the things Nintendo boasted with was 3-way battles during Splatfest. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to play the game during the second half of the Splatfest, so I don't know what that feels like, or what that's like at all, to be honest. So yeah, next time round, I'm eager to give that a go. Bit of a shame I missed that. The Anarchy Battles are locked to level 10 unless you have Splatoon 2 save data on your system. There's 2 Anarchy Battles, Open and Series, with each having 4 types of game modes. They're called Rainmaker, Clam Blitz, Splat Zones, and Tower Control. Open is 1 match, while Series is multiple matches, where the aim is to win 5 matches, and then you lose if you lose 3 matches before you win 5. Like I said, Open and Series rotate through 4 game modes, but honestly I'm only familiar with 2 of those, which is Splat Zones and Tower Control. I've got about 50 hours into Splatoon 3, but I only just started playing Anarchy Battles, so yeah. I don't think I've ever really played Clam Blitz or Rainmaker in the previous games either. Probably just a handful of times because I just do kind of remember a little bit, playing something along those lines. But the thing is, I just think Tower Control and Splat Zones I find more fun. That's probably why I know those much better. And if I see the other game modes, I just don't play them. At least not for now. I'll get to them later, I suppose. With Tower Control, you want to be in control of a tower, believe it or not. You get more points the farther into the enemy territory it goes, because it does move. So if you're on the tower and you're in control of it, it goes towards the enemy side, and obviously the other way around if the opposite's happening. And then if you reach the last checkpoint, your team automatically wins, and of course the other way around is the other way around. Splat Zone is where you try and be in control of an area in the middle of the map by inking it. What I like about these 2 modes is that they're kind of similar in principle to some of the more traditional first-person shooter game modes that I'm used to, and I like how they've adapted, that kind of gameplay to this game. Basically, the point is you try to be in control of the areas, except one is stationary and the other thing moves. Compared to Turf War, you also need to use different strategies and weapons. One thing I've found out is that blasters can be very useful when people are standing on platforms with charge-type weapons, like they're just hanging out in the same place, because you can just be below them outside of their range, but you can still get them without direct line of sight because the burst of the blasters can usually still get them. I hope that makes sense. I probably have some footage to show you exactly what I mean. You gain money and experience like with Turf War, but remember, Anarchy Battles were previously called Rank Battles for a reason. Winning and losing gains and loses you points. Your rank starts at C- and you can go up to, I think it's S+, I'm pretty sure. You can't go lower than C-. How do I know? Because I lost my first battle, that's how. Eventually you do have to pay or wager points in order to to join Open and Series matches. But since I'm still, totally a noob at the lowest ranking, I haven't had to do any of that. But hey, I've only played a handful of matches so far. I'll probably get into it more, including Clam Blitz and Rainmaker in the coming months or so. Guess what's next? It's Salmon Run. I think this is a real highlight of the series. This is a 4-player co-op thing I mentioned earlier. You try and collect golden eggs while 3 waves of salmonids try and stop you from accomplishing that task. There's a range of small and large salmonids, but the real threats are the boss ones, who also drop golden eggs when defeated, and usually that's how you acquire them. There's a lot of different kinds, and there's different ways to beat them. Eventually you'll learn how it goes. Mostly when you're new, you just kind of, shoot whatever you can see and just observe what your teammates are doing, because there's always going to be at least one person who knows what they're doing. At least one would hope, because, sometimes you need to throw grenades at certain times or whatever it may be. Each wave is different, so sometimes it can be waves of salmonid bosses, other times golden eggs are just kind of found in a treasure chest, and then hordes of salmonids storm the area to stop you. There's actually a lot of things that can happen. Plus there's also high and low tide moments giving you a very large range in terms of traversable area. Anything from vast areas to almost nothing at all. I like the randomness, as you really never know what to expect. But sometimes you can just be really unlucky, not just because, you know, the people you're paired with, but how the enemies can just suddenly flood the area. Like when there's a ton of grillers that can one-shot you when you come in contact with them. And then in high tide situations and you just have a charged weapon, it just becomes really difficult to deal with all the enemies that are just, you know, overrunning you. There is a chance that after the third wave, you'll have to face a massive boss called a King Salmonid. You have to try and defeat it by shooting golden eggs at it, which you get from the usual source. So yes, regular bosses are still in the map there, and you have to kill them to get the eggs, and use that as ammunition basically. I've actually never managed to beat a King Salmonid, but even so, you gain bronze, silver, and golden scales from fighting it, which you can then use to buy some customizable items at the Grisco store, or whatever it's called again. One of the appeals to me is that every wave you get one of 4 different pre-assigned weapons, and that forces you to get familiar with weapon types you normally wouldn't use. Of course, that can be detrimental when things get really difficult. Let's talk about something that I didn't even mention about all online multiplayer modes, and that is that the maps rotate. Not physically, of course, but as in there's a rotation of playable maps, and that happens every 2 hours with all the modes in multiplayer lobby. The 4 game modes in Anarchy Battles, as in Clan Blitz, Rainmaker, Splat Zone, and Tower Control, also rotate around during that time. And during those 2 hours, each multiplayer mode has a set of 2 maps that you can play. I had to look it up, but apparently Salmon Run, it's like every 40 hours for the maps and weapons to rotate. So yeah, that goes a little bit differently there. Now that we have multiplayer out of the way, let's talk about the lobbies and menus for multiplayer, because that's where a lot of the cool changes are. For one, the regular multiplayer lobby now has a target practice stage built into it, so you can goof off while the matchmaking is happening, or of course, you know, if you just want to try out your weapons. Other players from previous matches can be there too, and they have this hologram looking appearance. Presumably your friends are there too if you're playing with them. Another thing is that basically all the things you might want to access in this game mode are in the lobby. For example, instead of the food truck being in the city square, you can now exchange food tickets here for money or experience boosts. So I think that's very convenient. But while matchmaking is happening, you don't have access to that stuff, just so you know. You have to be just in the lobby and, without any matchmaking taking place. And unfortunately, you cannot change your equipment while you're matchmaking, and you can't quit the matchmaking either unless you just forcibly close the game, I suppose. There's some new stuff in the lobby here, like the locker room, which you can customize, or specifically you have a locker to customize in the locker room. Like the square where you can see everybody's drawings, the locker is like a way to express yourself. Some of them are really well done. There's a lot of fun to customize everything with stickers, clothes, weapons, and other decorations that you can buy or receive as rewards. Some of this stuff is really expensive, but that also means that you have something to spend your money on finally. Because that's what I found in Splatoon 2, like you had so much money, and it's like, what the hell do you do with it? Believe it or not, this is a really fun part of the game. Other features can be accessed through the computer. There you can customize emotes and splash tags. Splash tags are basically what you'd find in, let's say, Call of Duty, where you can, change the tag, background, and have a little slogan. And then there's also 3 slots for stickers that highlight some of your achievements. What I really like is that now you can also watch and share replays. A very handy thing for someone like myself, because I can just play games and matches, and then, I can just record the good replays, and that really saves on hard drive space. It's also weird how you get a sense of deja vu when you do the replays. Even if I go back to the oldest one, I think it saves like the last 20 or something like that. And then maybe it's like something from 5 days ago. And then I rewatch the match, and it's like I remember every single thing I do as I watch it. It's a strange feeling. On to the graphics. Okay, I'll be honest. At first glance, there isn't that much that's changed in terms of the quality. The main hub is 1080p at 30 FPS. The actual gameplay is at a lower resolution, like usual, but it runs at 60 FPS. I didn't really spend time comparing screenshots or anything like that, but you know, the game has a cartoony style anyway, so it's slightly immune to certain technical shortcomings. But I think the game looks great and you can't really expect a massive improvement considering both games are running on this old-ass hardware. The point is it looks and runs good, so yeah. I mean, don't expect 4K, I mean, if you do, you're an idiot. The game has changed enough visually though, like with the menus for instance, so that you do know you're playing a new game. There's new animations too, since now you can customize victory poses and there's new weapons. Oh yeah, just very randomly, because I just forgot to write about it. I also like that in the multiplayer matches you can now, instead of just, you know, spawning in the main spawn area, there's actually now an area where you can jump into, so yeah, you probably have already seen it in the footage, but, you know, whatever, I just want to mention it. Anyways, back to the graphics. So as you probably know, with Splatoon, they always have some sort of, you know, city or urban landscape that they base their game's town square on, or city square. And this time they chose to base it on the walled city of Hong Kong, which is long demolished, except they kind of kept the look more light and cheerful. And another notable point of interest is that the low-flying planes, like that references the old Hong Kong airport. So yeah, that was kind of cool. In terms of art style, the game has been very consistent over all of its releases. There's still this skater punk aesthetic that I really like. And there's this thing I don't know how to describe, but it's like the designers are very aware of everyday items, things, and branding, I suppose, with all the references to them in the maps, the objects and items and equipment. And yeah, not to mention, you know, there's actually clothing and equipment brands in the game itself. The lockers highlight that even more since you've got stickers and you basically get to show off your, you know, your branded stuff. I can't think of any other game that does this like Splatoon does. The whole aesthetic carries over to the music. I really like the pop punk songs. I kind of grew up in that era where that was popular, like in the 2000s. So just, you know, hear that in a game like that is pretty fun. Some highlights are also the occasional metal songs that you hear. I wish there was more of them. But then again, there's that one new one that keeps playing over and over again. But overall, I think there's a very nice range of genres. I always like the general sound design of Splatoon games too. I think the effects are very much appropriate, and you know, the sounds are also satisfying when you go through the menus. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Splatoon 3. Not much improvement on the graphics there, but the game runs and looks good. I like the new additions like the locker room. The only thing I didn't touch on was the table turf battle. It's like an in-universe card game you can play, but honestly, I don't really care. I just want to play normal Splatoon. So yeah, I hope you found that interesting. Let me know what you think. How do you like Splatoon 3 if you have it? And I'd be interested to hear if there's things about Splatoon 2 that you like more than in the new game there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.